Hey settlers, I'm your host, Ben. And here is a hidden story that I feel needs telling. The Lechlade Shadow Walker. Lechlade, Gloucestershire. On the edge of the Cotswolds where the Thames grows wide and the field turns to marsh, there's a story that locals only share when the nights are at their longest. It's not about the river monsters or the will-o'-the-wisps, but something stranger. A presence in the darkness where the only light comes from the moon, or sometimes nothing at all. They call it the Shadow Walker. Some say that on certain moonless nights a long and possibly dark shadow moves along the towpath, silent and watchful, never quite touching the feet of anyone nearby, but always trailing behind. Some see it flicker across the water, others glimpse it slipping between the trees, and some don't notice it at all until it's too late. Locals have whispered about it for generations. Sometimes it's blamed for missing dogs, odd chills, even the lights flickering in riverside cottages. Most people laugh it off as nerves or a trick of the eye, but there are those who felt the Shadow Walker close up. This is the account of Sophie Blake, a nurse at the local surgery and a lifelong resident of Lechlade. She'd heard the stories growing up, her dad joking about "don't let your shadow outpace you," or her grandmother warning her to mind your back on a moonless night. She never thought much of it, but one night, everything changed. It was late in November, cold, river mist rolling in, and the sky as black as a shut eye. Sophie had just finished a long shift, and, as she often did, decided to walk home along the Thames to clear her head. She remembers that night very vividly. No stars, no moon, only her phone's torch and the orange glow from the lockkeeper's cottage already fading behind her. Halfway down the path, Sophie felt something. A prickling on the back of her neck, the sense of being watched. She stopped, told herself it was just a fox, maybe, or the echo of her own footsteps. But then she saw it. A shadow, longer and darker than any torchlight should cast. It moved behind her, perfectly silent, as if it belonged to someone she couldn't see. Of course, she tried to walk faster, but the shadow followed. She stopped. The shadow kept going, stretching ahead, sliding over the frost-slick grass, always just at the edge of sight. At the main crossing near the road, Sophie was about to step off the curb when she felt a sudden, powerful tug, like her hand grabbed her coat, yanking her backwards. She stumbled, heart thundering, and a car shot past, headlights off, missing her by inches. The driver never did stop. Sophie dropped her phone. She was scrambling to pick it up. She looked back at the path. The shadow had gone. She was shaken, but she was alive. The next morning, she told her boyfriend and her colleagues at the surgery. Most chalked it up to adrenaline, to her imagination, or just simple luck. But Sophie knew what she had felt, and that was only the beginning. In the days after, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling she was being followed. Not by a person, but by something less solid. Every time she passed a reflective surface, shop windows, puddles in the lane, she saw something odd. Shadows that stretched the wrong way, shadows that flickered even when nothing was moving. She started noticing the people around her, the man in the corner shop whose shadow lagged behind as she walked, a pair of school children, their shadows moving side by side, but one stopped to tie a shoelace, whilst the shadow carried on. An old woman at the bus stop with 3 shadows cast in different directions, none matching the light. It wasn't just her own eyes. Sophie took photos. At first nothing, but one evening her phone gallery glitched. The images showed strange blurs, outlines where shadows should be. sometimes a hand or face, barely visible. At home, Sophie started to feel watched in her own flat. Her cat hissed at corners where nothing could be seen. One night, she was brushing her teeth. The shadow in the bathroom mirror lingered a bit longer than she did. She spun, but nothing was there. She tried to talk to friends, but the more she pressed, the more uncomfortable they became. "Shadows can't move on their own, Soph," one friend said. "It's just tricks of the light," said another. But the stories started to line up. A neighbour recalled her father insisting on never walking the towpath after dark because the shadows get hungry. A teenager at the bus stop said she'd seen his own shadow step ahead of him in the fog, and she'd run all the way home. Sophie dug into local records, old newspapers, village message boards. The Lechlade Library held stories going back decades. One from 1963 told of a woman who vanished whilst walking the river at night. The only thing found was her scarf, snagged on a branch, next to a patch of ground where the frost had not settled, as if someone had stood there a long time. Another report from the 1920s described a group of boys who, after a dare, claimed their shadows ran away to the fields. None of them would walk home alone for weeks. There were whispers about a shadow walker, sometimes described as a warning, sometimes as a protector, sometimes as a punishment for those who crossed the river at the wrong hour. One night, not long after the accident, Sophie decided to face it. She waited for a moonless night, phone in pocket, and walked the towpath alone. The night was thick with mist. Her torch barely cut through the dark. She kept to the centre of the towpath, scanning the ground, looking for movement. She felt the chill return, her hair standing on her arms. This time she stopped, and so did the shadow. It loomed, impossibly tall, stretching from the water's edge all the way to her feet. Sophie stepped forward. The shadow moved to meet her. For a moment, it felt like a mirror, her own fear, her own story, staring back at her. But then she saw it shift. A ripple, a suggestion of another face, another life. Sophie spoke aloud. "What do you want?" The shadow flickered, and she heard, not with her ears, but in her bones, the word remember. The torch blinked, the river fog rolled in, and when the light returned, she was alone. After that night, Sophie found she could ignore the shadows most of the time. But every so often, usually on the darkest of nights, she would catch them watching, guiding, sometimes even warning her. She started noticing patterns. A friend lost her keys. Sophie found them where the friend's shadow paused longest at the party. A lost dog returned, curling up to sleep in the patch of shadow beneath the owner's window. Not all the stories ended well, though. Sometimes the shadow flickered away before the danger could be averted. Sometimes the shadow simply never returned, and neither did the person it belonged to. The legend of the Shadow Walker still circulates in Lechlade on Thames. Some say it's a guardian, an echo of those lost to the river, watching out for the living. Others warn it's a thief collecting shadows, drawing people towards the water, and whatever waits beyond. For Sophie, it remains a mystery. She never walks a towpath on a moonless night anymore, but she always checks to see if a shadow is following, just close enough to catch her if she ever slips. Thank you for staying with me. If you got this far, you obviously like lost stories. Thusly, I recommend this story. Oh, why not give us a little like and a subscribe too?